This is how you come down.
Huh. Just like that. Just like that, back home. Like it didn't even happen. Kind of a bizarre feeling, man, when you come home after being away for a while. Completely on the opposite side of the clock. Definitely a little frazzled. Really frazzled. But what do you do? Can't sit there inside and be frazzled. So it is absolutely pissing rain. Apparently it's been pissing for a week, and it's going to be pissing for a week solid. Not that great of a welcome coming back, but whatever. So much to do here. Played a dirty trick on the dog. When we got to the house, we got up the front gate of we got a long driveway there, and I snuck out of the truck and I hid behind the gate post. And then Sarah drove up to the house, and the dogs came out and went absolutely apeshit, and I videotaped it, played a dirty trick on Ruby. So she saw Sarah for like 2 jumps, and then went, ripped over to the truck and circled my truck to the driver's side. She's like, "What, Dad? No." Right? Went back to her, and then I couldn't help it. I went, "Woof." And she's like, "Huh?" And then I videotaped her doing Mach 5 up the driveway to me. That was pretty fun. And she's been stuck to me like glue. Stuck to me like glue. They sure are funny, eh? Dogs? She needs my hand in her mouth, too. She's sitting on my lap. Not on my lap. But she is so big. She grew so much. Easy over 100 now. She's so big. God. She just needs my hand in her mouth. Anyway, I'm rambling, babbling. I've learned a lot. The reset was very healthy for the mind, for the body. I've learned a lot, so much this past few years. I've learned so much from here, from listening to the people, and I'm going to pass on a few things that I've come to conclusion with soon. Not today, because I'm just too frazzled. But I have a lot I really want to share with people and encourage people as well. One little quick hint of what I want to talk about eventually is being honest and kind. I think that's where the majority of the people have lost themselves. A lot of people in power, etc. It doesn't matter where you go, what topic you tackle. It's being honest and kind. It's a choice we all have, right? And it's a universal language, especially when we're traveling. I notice if you just go out of your way to be kind to people, it doesn't matter who they are, the demeanor they have. Being kind is a universal language, and it causes the exact same reaction. Doesn't matter who you are, what country you're in, if you can speak the same language verbally or not. If you're kind, it creates the exact same instant reaction. And being honest. Anyway, slowly waking up. Lots of voices to be heard, which is very, very important. I can't describe how important it is to listen to the people. I can't. It's very, very important. I hope people are realizing that, people that come here. And for anybody who's here for the first time right now, or been here a short while, or keep coming in to see if there's any new evidence. If you are stuck, you're still stuck in that space of thinking that you need evidence of something, or if this channel is dedicated to creating evidence for you, you're wrong, and you're in the wrong place, and you should probably move on. Unless you want to stick it out and learn. But as far as trying to prove something, that's definitely the furthest from what this channel's about. All right, we are trying to discover the what's and the whys for a lot of questions here, and we're learning together. That's what we're doing. If you're here for entertainment, sucks to be you, all right? But if you want to hang out and learn and grow your brain, this is a really, really good place, okay? Now, I think these are fairly recent. These are all recent. I went in the recent category this morning, sitting there having a coffee, still shell-shocked being at home. So I'm going to start reading now. This is titled, Maybe the Woods Don't Go Silent. Hey, Steve, just a quick thought. Maybe the woods just seem like all goes quiet, and instead it's just your ability to hear. Now, bear with me here. As you know, one person hears the roar scream while others don't hear a thing. Now, when you are mind spoke to, all you hear is the mind speak. So, is it possible that they have the ability to turn your hearing on or off? Puzzle pieces. If we keep digging, we have a gold mine. LOL. Or at least some good exercise. No shit, Michael. It's a possibility. I know there's definitely something bizarre going on. Bizarre to us is going on for sure. We spoke about this, or I spoke about this the other day. It was when we have hundreds of people coming in and sharing, and how many people have had someone laying next to them, especially in a camping setting, in a tent or a camper or a trailer. Also houses, but I think the more dominant common denominator with what we're talking about is people being in tents. Somebody camping out. You're camping and somebody's beside you. And they are absolutely in a coma, sound asleep. And you can hear the screaming. You can hear the breathing. You can hear the foot stomping, the stuff getting rattled off the picnic table, whatever. And you just cannot wake the person up. Oh, cars too. A lot of people driving. And I've got somebody sleeping in the car beside them. Wake up, look at this. And they will not wake up. They cannot wake during the experience somebody's having. Hopefully we find the answer to that. I think we will. I'm confident we will. And I think it's something that's going to be absolutely new to us, foreign to us. We can't wrap our brain around, but if you're like me and you want to get the truth, we're going to have to look into it and find out and wrap our brain around it and accept the facts once they're delivered to us, right? But that is something really weird. Weird to us as being simple human beings is the fact that something so incredible is going down with a lot of noise, physical noise accompanied with it, and somebody who's with you asleep cannot wake up during the whole episode. It's like a dream, right? It's like a dream for the experiencer. Who's next? Who's next? As promised, my wife's Night of Terror in Utah is the title of this email. Ooh, looks like a book. It's a book. Okay, you're going to be heard, man. Here we go. Hi, Steve. Thank you for providing a way for people to share these experiences that they didn't want or ask for. It's too easy. Thank you for sharing with us. This may be lengthy, but here it goes. I live in Eagle Mountain, Utah, and I sent in to you my brief silhouette against the sky encounter that I had in 2009 here in Eagle Mountain. You read that encounter at the beginning of January 23 in your post titled Sasquatch Photos as well, a crisp print. January 23, so that's a year ago. I'm glad you didn't spell out photos because FOTS makes it easy to find the episode in Google. So please don't go back and change it. Oh, I must have had a typo as usual. My encounter was the first one you read after your, quote, we are running out of time, quote, rant in that episode. At the preface to my encounter, I mentioned that my wife had a frightening encounter at a ranger station in the Wichita Mountains in Utah that I slept through. So this is that encounter. This encounter also involved a U.S. Forest Ranger person that, throughout this narrative, I will refer to only as Ranger, or the Ranger, to protect this individual as was requested by this Ranger at that time, if we ever reported the event. All right. The encounter took place in 2013 in the Ashley National Forest of eastern Utah, near the spine of the Wichita Mountains. that run east to west as opposed to the more prevalent north/south trending mountain ranges that comprise the mountainous southwestern United States that we live in. The U.S. National Forest Service maintains many campsites, towers, cabins, and guard stations throughout the country that regular individuals can rent for a nominal fee per night. Recreation.gov is the website you can go to in order to schedule your stay. The Trout Creek Guard Station sites at around 9,300 feet in elevation in densely wooded, gently sloping terrain and is on the south-facing slopes of the Uinta Mountains. Straight north of the guard station and over the mountain spine and slopes is the Flaming Gorge, Wyoming recreational area. My wife and I both love the outdoors, and we had just finished our first real estate deal here in Utah, and had just gotten paid. It was July 2013, and we wanted to celebrate this event by getting a secluded cabin in the woods somewhere. We didn't want it to be exceptionally pricey, like you would get around here in Sundance or Park City. Plus, we didn't want the crowds. So I went online and found the recreation.gov website and found that the prices were great. The same guard station now rents at $60 a night, and back then in 2013, it was going for around $45 a night. And we wanted to stay for 3 nights. Unfortunately, our 3-night stay was cut short. There were a lot more pictures on the website of this cabin back then in 2013 than there is now. You can see a pretty detailed overview on YouTube of it by the Forest Service they made during the winter when you can snowmobile in. According to the photos I saw, the cabin had uncovered windows throughout and partial glass front door. Great for looking out during the day, but scary at night when anything outside can look in while you're inside with the interior lit up and you can't see out. Yeah, that's typical for any camp or rural home. In preparation for our trip and because of these photos, I brought a poncho and several thick blankets that I could use to cover those windows. I didn't have anything yet that I could use on the glass of the door. That deficiency would be answered by a trail map I would purchase at the Vernal Ranger Station on the way up. I wasn't too keen on the nighttime situation up there since I had that silhouette encounter near my home just 4 years, and I now knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that these creatures existed. I was taking a chance by being way up there secluded, but the love of the outdoors overrode my concerns, and my wife wasn't as experienced in the Sabe experiences as I was with my brief encounter, and she had no concerns except maybe for bears. Prior to going up to the cabin, you have to stop at the Vernal Ranger Station to check in and get the combination code to unlock the door on the west side of the cabin. When I went into the ranger station, there were several Forest Service employees there, and one of them helped me. And this is the person I'll refer to from here on out as the ranger. This ranger helped me by answering my questions and rung up the purchase I made of the waterproof trail map I purchased of the area around the cabin that I would put up on the front door to cover the glass. One of the questions I asked was about any sightings reported of bears in the area of the cabin, and the ranger said none have been reported recently. With the information, the code, and the map, my wife and I headed north on the paved road of U.S. Highway 191 to the Forest Service Road 18, to Forest Service Road 20, then to the FS 40 branch off that takes you to and ends at the Trout Creek Guard Station. All the while during the journey in, my wife was intently looking out into the woods and wistfully musing about how many animals we were passing and commenting on what they might be. Sasquatch was not on the list. The area the guard station and outbuildings are in is a slight pasture valley that slopes gently down from north to south with a creek named Trout Creek, running through on the west of the guard station about 600 feet away. The view to the creek is almost unobstructed. There are 2 lines of fences around and through the pasture area where the creek goes through and the wood fences were down, but there was another, more modern type fence that enclosed an area that the old rangers that used the guard station previously probably pastured their horses. To the north and east and south of the woods that come to within 50 feet at their closest with the 2 lone pines that are 15 feet away from the east window. There's a set of solar panels near the southeast corner of the building on a stand, also about 15 feet away, that charges a battery somewhere that really doesn't keep much of a charge if you use the interior lights at night, so bring your own lighting. All right, is this a promo for the cabin so far? There's an outhouse about 100 feet away, upslope to the northeast, close to the trees. That is your regular enclosed hole in the ground that you see at most campsites maintained by the Forest Service. My wife refused to use the outhouse, so I had to bring an alternative that she could use inside the cabin that I purchased from Emergency Essentials. Also, upslope between the cabin and the outhouse is the spring that is used for the water in the cabin. Questionable purity of the spring comes to mind. The cabin stove and refrigerator are both serviced by a propane tank situated about 30 feet away between the outhouse and the cabin. This is my first time ever lighting a propane fire under a refrigerator, and I just couldn't fathom how a fire could be used to make something cold. But the refrigerator worked just fine after it was lit. North of the guard station were two other buildings that were probably used for the old Rangers' horses to stable them or something. Maybe to house hay for the horses if the station was used in the winter. There's a nice fire pit with benches around it, south of the guard station. We drove up and parked our SUV on the dirt road immediately west of the building and started to unload. But I had not yet used the code on the door when somebody in a truck came barreling up the road in a cloud of dust and confronted us very rudely as to who we were and what we were doing there. I told him, and he challenged me by having me go up to the door and put the code and open it, so I did. Oops, I lost spot. He was much nicer after that, and I guess he lives in one of the few trailers out there to ensure the safety of the cabin. My guess would be the closest trailer, about 1,500 feet away to the south-southeast. I guess he wasn't told we were coming. Oh, after this experience my wife had, I'd love to hear the stories he could tell. While I was bringing the stuff into the station, I could hardly call it that. This thing was tiny. It was essentially one room with a slight portion wall to separate the main room from the refrigerator, stove, and the shower area that didn't work. While bringing stuff in, my wife was busy killing dozens of flies. I guess they crawl in from the tiny cracks around the windows and doors and just couldn't get out. There were dozens alive and hundreds dead, and my wife was letting me know about it. I had one of the first Android tablets with me because the camera on it was much better than the cameras on cell phones at the time. So I started videoing the area, and you can hear my wife on the video whacking away at the little pests as I was filming from outside. I was thinking sarcastically, what a great way to start a 3-day rest and relaxation. Going on with the description of the interior, the main room couldn't have been more than 20 feet long by 15 feet wide. There's a stovepipe wood-burning stove in one corner, the sink and counter underneath the large wide east window. There's a wide south window that looked out the narrow patch. At the southwestern corner facing the south was the windowed front door that goes out on the narrow porch. The porch outside was 5 feet from the door to the edge and as wide as the building. Inside, just 3 or 4 feet away from the front door, was the foot of the twin-size single bed that was up against and parallel with the west wall with a bunk bed behind it, nestled parallel against the portion that separates the main room from the refrigerator. I might be too tired, I think, maybe. I might be too tired. Maybe it's just me being very tired, but this is a little bit much, man. I appreciate you writing in, but come on. The twin-size single bed would be the bed my wife and I used that was nestled underneath the window of the west wall that looked out over the pasture and the creek to the west. I covered all the windows except this one on the west wall. After getting everything in and settled and putting the flies to permanent sleep, we took a walk out in the field and walked next to the creek. After the walk, we went back to the cabin and set our aluminum camping rocking chairs on the porch under the south window, now covered, and admired the view. We'd gotten there in the afternoon with a few hours of daylight left, and we had gotten settled in. The sun was beginning to go down, and I got my last video that day as we looked out over this perfect, peaceful setting and prepared dinner for the evening. I personally had no problem using the outhouse as it got darker, but I made sure all my business was done by dark because I wasn't interested in a midnight walk 100 feet to the outhouse near the trees. My wife had already made us use our interior answer to the outhouse, so I wasn't interested in using that either. Getting into the single twin bed, my wife had to be on the outside edge so she could get up and use our interior answer to the outhouse without waking me, while I was stuck next to the west wall, directly under the west-facing uncovered window several feet above me. Both of our feet were 3, maybe 4 feet from the front door, and the front door window that had the trail map taped over it so nobody could look down on us while we were sleeping. The next part I have to transcribe from the video I took of my wife the next morning, a few hours after her hours-long ordeal with 2 of these creatures that were obviously communicating with each other. I waited to record her for a few hours so she could try to get much-needed sleep before we cut our adventure short to head back to Vernal. I saved these videos to my private YouTube account, and I'm glad I did because I accidentally broke that Android tablet years later and would have lost these videos. Excuse me. My wife said it started around midnight, and she says she was just laying there and all of a sudden she could hear footsteps come on the porch from the east. But it wasn't like someone wearing tennis shoes or hiking boots or any kind of shoes. It was something very heavy and kind of soft-footed sound with great weight. She could hear it walking carefully across the porch. Transcribed account, quote, and then it messed with the chairs a little bit, like it was kind of looking at them and touching them, and touched them to rock them. Very distinct. I was scared to death, and the windows don't have any locks on them, and they could very easily slide them back and forth, very easily. And I was absolutely petrified. And I was laying here looking at the windows, and all I could move were my eyeballs. I couldn't even move my pinky to try to rouse my husband to tell him what I was hearing outside. There was one window that's not covered that we wanted to look out of at the stars, but we didn't want to cover it because it is so high up. But I was ready for a head or something to appear in that window when I thought about telling my husband. But I was worried that he might instinctively shoot at it out of protecting me, and so I didn't know what to do. And I was praying a lot that we would be protected inside, end quote. And then it continues. She continues. I could hear it get off the porch, and then it went about 70 feet away, and there was some kind of knocking on a tree behind the cabin, and so there seemed to be another one. And then not seemed to be. There was another one. And then this one that was just on the porch knocked on a tree back, and it was almost like distinct communication. I then asked her what the sound sounded like, and she said, it sounded like if you got a baseball bat and hit it up against a tree, but the sounds were there was a lot of precision in those sounds, and it scared me that it would be a Bigfoot because the level of intelligence that was shown. There is a true communication in that one would knock on the back behind the cabin and seemed close, and then the other one in front of the cabin came even closer. It was almost like the one behind the cabin was asking, you know how many are in there? Or something like that, because then there would be 2 distinct hits on the tree with a big stick or log like a baseball bat. It was like bonk, bonk on the closest tree to the cabin, right by the fire pit. You could just hear it very crystal clear, and I was absolutely scared to death. My heart was pounding through my chest so rapidly, and I don't have chest problems or anything, but afterward my chest hurt. It really hurt. I didn't know, and this all took quite some time, about 2.5 hours actually, not of tapping continually, but about the whole thing and the fear and everything. The strange thing is that I didn't physically hear anything other than the tapping or the footsteps, but I felt this almost a vibration inside my chest. I can't describe it. The best way I can describe is when you are at a concert and the bass is so loud that it vibrates in your chest. Well, it's kind of similar to that. It's the only way I can describe it. And it put a fear in me, like I was absolutely afraid, far beyond the already terrifying experience I was going through. I want to remain anonymous because I am a professional and it can hurt my business, so I don't want to use my name of where I live. But this really happened. And I know that it happened, and I can't deny it. And I never will. People say there is no Bigfoot and discredit you, and that is why I have to remain anonymous. But we know that a mind, once expanded, can never go back, kind of thing, and we know that is the way it is. So after it was all over about 3 a.m. in the morning, I finally got to the point where I could wake up my husband, and I told him what had happened, and my face, every muscle in my face, must have been extremely tense for 2.5 hours because my whole head and the worst tension headache and my eyeballs ached and every tooth in my head ached and my jaw ached real bad. To open my mouth and stretch it hurt. So I must have been clenching my teeth the whole time, unknowingly, and almost felt as if my head had been beaten with a baseball bat all over my head. Because it hurt so much and I needed to go to the bathroom so bad, but I didn't dare get up to go because I was so afraid. Anyway, this is a true story, and it really happened. And I really do believe now that the creature, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call him, does exist because I know a bear cannot do that. And even the way it walked, you could hear 2 feet, like bipedal. It wasn't like a bear. A bear tends to drag his feet a little more. And it was not a mountain lion. There's no way. It was way too heavy. You could hear it. You couldn't hear the porch creak, but you could hear the footsteps of weight, is the best way I can describe it. And the precision, the pounding on the tree, it sounded like a form of communication, which told me this animal had more intelligence than gorillas or chimpanzees. But it was a definite form of communication, asking back and forth, talking through the pounding on the trees. And when it got closer was when it really scared me to death. And that scared me more than any kind of than I have ever been scared my whole life. I am sound mind and body. I don't drink alcohol, nothing like that, and I don't use drugs. I know what I know, and I know what I heard, and that is the truth. End quote. On further discussion of this incident with my wife after I recorded it, I mentioned to her that I kind of half woke up during the night, hearing a lot of different animal calls, which reminded her that these animal calls. Sorry, guys. Let me read that sentence again. I mentioned to her that I kind of half woke up during the night, hearing a lot of different animal calls, which reminded her that these animal calls did come at the end of the experience, as the creatures were leaving. And it was a fast combination of owls, coyotes, wolves, cows, other birds' calls, etc., that she had forgotten to mention during the recording. From my perspective, I was comatose throughout the 2.5-hour ordeal until the very end. I slowly woke as the animal calls registered in my brain, but since the sounds were declining in volume and maybe distance, I drifted off back to sleep until my wife decided to wake me and tell me about it. Needless to say, I would not put my wife through another night out there, and I packed up everything, and we headed back down the mountain to Vernal, cutting our 3-day trip to 1 night only. I mentioned above about how, on our way up to the cabin, my wife was looking around as we drove through the woods and was wondering what kind of animals we were passing. On the way down, it was the complete opposite. My wife, who absolutely loved the woods and would go off hiking by herself in the woods before we were married, had her head down below the level of the SUV windows staring at the floorboards, or with her eyes closed the entire trip on those dirt Forest Service roads. She didn't look up once until we were down out of the mountains, which was totally out of character for her. She was scared so bad. When we got to the Vernal Ranger Station, I went in through the door to let them know that I was vacating the cabin. The person at the counter was the ranger that I had talked to the day previous, and the first thing out of my mouth was, quote, "I asked you about bear sightings yesterday, but you didn't tell me about another kind of sighting." Immediately and quietly, the ranger said, "Bigfoot." It was not a Bigfoot question mark response. It was Bigfoot said as a statement. Like the ranger knew these beings were up there and wasn't surprised. I said, a relieved yes, half expecting a derisive response, and I had kind of held my breath after asking my question and let it out with relief as I responded. The ranger was not alone in the building, but was the only one at the counter, so in hushed tones, the ranger informed me that the ranger couldn't talk at the station and give me a written down phone number at a time to call while we were on the road back to Eagle Mountain. While driving home, we called the number the ranger gave us, and while talking, the ranger told us that this person's job would be in jeopardy if the name of the ranger ever got out. We agreed, and the ranger told us of experiences the ranger had at the same place. The ranger mentioned that there have been many Sasquatch sightings at this guard station by many people throughout the years, which may be why there is no logbook. I understand your reasons for not mentioning the BF Blanco site, and I am sorry, but I did report this to them, and I was contacted by an investigator out of Idaho within hours of returning home, so I must credit them for that. You don't have to say his name, but I will include it here for you in case you ever get an email from him to describe his own experiences. Probably not. His name is blank blank, and he rented the same guard station 2 weeks later and had his own encounter, but he didn't cover the windows at night. This encounter was on that website for a few weeks and disappeared. Maybe because it was on federal land, or maybe because of the possible infrasound description that they don't like. It is fascinating that my wife couldn't actually physically hear it with her ears, but her lung cavity responded to the possible infrasound. We hear any website that was given out by these beings with the same effect. So here is one account for the general knowledge of the Club of No Return that the beings can emit this sound without roaring it at us. By the way, I was going through my desk a few weeks ago and found the paper that still had the ranger's phone number written on it. But it being a cell number, it might not longer be working. I haven't tried it. I understand this is lengthy and detailed, so I hope you get to sorry, guys. I understand that this was lengthy and detailed, so I hope you get to share this on your site. Thank you for doing what you do. It's good to get this out. Okay, man. Appreciate you. Now listen, don't feel insulted if I somewhat lose my patience, all right? And I do say that because a lot of people are so overly sensitive these days, right? You just came at me hard. I don't even know why I shared it on your site. You know, some people start sniveling. I don't think you're a sniveler at all. So, I apologize if I lost my patience, but now you've heard me reply your story, and for other people in the future who want to send the story in, if you're giving such a detailed, you know what? When there's so many people waiting to be heard, and I'm not being insulting, okay, you guys? I totally appreciate you sending this in. I love that you sent this in to us. But coming from my end of the coin, my side of the table here, you could have condensed it down quite a bit, which would have gave me more room to get more voices heard possibly, right? Let's face it, we don't really need to know how far away the fridge was from the table and the ceiling was from the floor, right? Could have saved us a bit of time, but I appreciate that. Aside from that, I absolutely appreciate you sending this in. I'm sure if there's that many people having shit go down at this site, they're here listening. And if you want to add to this and send in your experience, please do at sharemystory@howtohunt.com. But for the future reference, you guys try to, share us where it went down, what time of day, whatever you want. But get to the meat of it, right? Get to the knowledge part that's going to help somebody. You know what I mean? Like, just one thing to think about before you send it. Make sure you send in what you feel is going to help somebody, as well as yourself and me. And I wonder if those rangers are here listening. I wonder. Probably. Probably all right. All right, who's next? Who is next? How long's this one? It's not too long. I shouldn't say too long. They're never too long. The only time they're too long is when I'm already past, say, a half an hour or 40 minutes of reading, and then I hit a book-sized one. That's what makes it too long. Not the email, it's the amount of time I have left. Okay? Just to be clear. Okay, this is titled A Logger from Haunted Valley. A logger from Haunted Valley. The Chinook tribes, word for Haunted Valley is Yakult. Native American folklore has a story how the town of Yakult and the surrounding area got its name. As the story goes, while members of the tribe were picking huckleberries, 2 or 3 of their young girls went missing. The girls picked berries together as a group while their mothers worked close by. The girls were checked on periodically to ensure that they were safe. When it was time to head back to the village, the girls were nowhere to be found. There was no sign of a struggle, no bear or cougar tracks, and no tracks of the girls leading away from the area. They were just gone. The tribe's best trackers and hunters could find no sign, no tracks, and nothing to indicate where they may be. They were just gone, never to be seen again. It was as if someone or something spirited them away without anyone hearing or seeing anything out of the ordinary. From that day forward, the area was known as Yakult/Haunted Valley. Today, the town of Yakult lies in southwest Washington state, about 25 miles south of Mount St. Helens, the volcano that blew in 1980. The area is heavily forested with Douglas fir, hemlock, and western red cedar, and houses are scattered on acreage throughout that area. If you're to look online and search Sasquatch Yakult, Washington, you'll find several stories of sightings, a lot of sightings. I personally know of neighbors, family, and friends that have seen the forest people. My name is Rick Buck. I'm a retired logger and wildland forest firefighter. I'm 70 years old. As a faller, I fell old-growth timber. I also worked 24 years for DNR, Washington State Department of National Resources. My wife and I live 1 mile north of the town of Yakult. I've fished and hunted in this area most of my adult life. I also used to trap, but no longer do, as trapping is now illegal in the state of Washington. No shit. The rare exception being a sanctioned government nuisance trapper, a rare event. I rate my own 2 experiences with the forest people on a scale of 1 to 10 as about a 2. However, one of my next door neighbor's sons saw an infant Sasquatch while he was picking thimbleberries. I'm not sure whether it was on their property or ours. They are free to pick all they want on my land, as are the forest people, for I believe it is actually their land. Anyways, as my neighbor's 4-year-old son was picking berries, he was unaware there was an infant Sasquatch picking berries on the opposite side of the bushes he was getting his berries from. Apparently the all-white-haired infant forest person was curious and wanted to get a closer look at the little human. So it stood up and leaned closer, maybe thinking he had a new berry-picking friend. As they locked eyes, that was all it took. My little 4-year-old neighbor boy ran screaming all the way home, yelling about a white monkey in the woods. He did not see the mother Sasquatch, but I'm sure she must have been close by. He wouldn't go near those woods by himself for the longest time afterwards. It'd be many years later in those same woods where I had, let's just say, an experience. More on that later. Excuse me. My experiences. First experience, this is about 50 years ago. Hell, we didn't even have cell phones back then, and I'd never even heard of a microwave oven. And one of my fellow logging partners once told me, quote, "Buck, I read that in the future every house will have a computer in it," end quote. I thought, no way. Those computers back then would hardly fit in a 3-car garage. These computers were made by IBM, and only the government could afford one. I thought the old boy had lost it. Oh, and Apple, as in cell phones and computers. Back then, Apple was some fruit you bought at the produce section of a grocery store. And a Hershey bar was a nickel/5 pennies. No shit. Anyway, that's an insight on some of the talk the old-timer fallers talked about while riding in the crummy on the way home. I sometimes miss those days, especially when we stopped at the creek on our way home, where we had our beer stashed. Nothing like ice-cold Mountain Creek beer. Yeah, no shit. The little trees we felled were 2 to 4 feet in diameter, and it was not uncommon to fall 6-foot diameter or larger trees. When those trees hit the ground shook. I once fell a Douglas fir over 10 feet in diameter. However, my largest tree was a Sitka spruce out of Skamokawa, Washington, pronounced Ska-Mukawe. Why didn't they spell it that way then? Kidding. Near the Pacific coast, that spruce's diameter measured 9 foot 11 inches by 11 feet 2 inches. We always measured the diameter of a tree inside the bark, as it was not uncommon for the bark of trees to be several inches thick. Bark isn't figured into the diameter of a tree when counting scale. The amount of board feet in a tree. That's no bullshit about the size of those trees. That's no bullshit about the size of those trees, believe it or not. And when I believe it, they're here and bigger. I really don't give a rat's ass if some of you don't believe that. Wouldn't blame you at all. Not one photo did I take. I sure regret that. Oh, did I mention that I once cut timber for a company where one of our employees got killed on the job every year? I believe that. Except for 1 year. So the next year, 2 of our co-workers died on the job. To clarify that, they got killed falling timber the wrong way. It happens. It was a dangerous job falling that old growth timber, and everyone knew who the good fallers were. They didn't spend all their money at the saw shop buying new chainsaw bars after bending another one that week, or buying parts for the saws they smashed. The true test of their skills was that they were still alive at the end of the day. One of my best falling friends decided he wanted to fall timber in Alaska, on the islands. One day while falling a tree, it barber chaired and killed him quickly. I really like that guy. He once drove me to a hospital because I made a little mistake while falling timber one day. I nearly lost an eye. My frickin' doctor told me I was going to lose that eye. I told him, bullshit, ain't gonna happen. As I laid in that hospital bed, they sent a shrink/psychiatrist to talk to me about limb loss denial. As I lay there with both eyes bandaged shut, I let him talk, and then I told him, I'm not losing that eye. Well, it took about 6 months, but God is my witness. My eye healed up just fine. The doctor said it wasn't him, it was a miracle. I said, yep, I believe in miracles. Uh-oh, I'm rambling. It's okay, I've been there. Forest people, experience number 1. So it's like 40 plus years ago when I'm elk hunting in southwest Washington state. Back then I really didn't believe in the Sasquatch people. In fact, I didn't know anything about them. So I'm walking up a gated logging road, hunting by myself. After about a mile, I'm hearing something paralleling me, about 20 to 30 feet off to my right. I can't see shit because there's about a gazillion little 10 to 20 feet tall hemlock trees flanking the road. In southwest Washington, those hemlock grow like weeds alongside some of the logging roads. You can't see 10 feet through them. It's like trying to see through a hay bale. Not happening. So it's like, I stop, it stops. I walk, it walks. Always staying just out of my sight. Sometimes it doesn't stop fast enough and it takes one extra step when I stop fast on purpose. Now I'm thinking, what in the hell is that? It's breaking sticks when it walks and doesn't care that I know it's there. There were no other trucks in the area, so I'm thinking this is not another hunter. It's not a bear. We have our bear. No, these are black bears. They see us and they think, oh shit, gun, and they run like hell. Won't work on a grizz. Once got between a grizzly and one of her cubs, and this is in Alaska, and she started gnashing her teeth at me. In grizzly talk, that translates to imminent attack. Another story for another day. So, I'm still walking up that road, listening to this thing paralleling me. I know it's not a deer. Blacktail are way smarter than that. Cats, cougar, you'll never hear them. Very skilled at stalking. Not an elk. They make a lot of noise, breaking limbs and shit, but they're not stupid. So they're not going to hang out with a hunter. Now I'm thinking, what in the hell is this thing? There's no smell, no grunts, no whoops or anything vocal, just that damn thing stalking me. Well, I'm thinking, what if I just burst through those hemlock and rushed whatever this was? I'm thinking I got a 7mm Magnum, and that should put it in the hurt locker if necessary. Well, I just have this feeling that whatever it was It won. I turned around and returned to my truck. I wasn't really scared. It just seemed like the right thing to do. You sound like my grandfather. You must have been scared shitless. Well, no, I was concerned. Come on, Grandpa, you must have been terrified. Stephen, I was concerned. Right? 40 years later, I'm thinking I just might know what that was. Forest People Experience number 2. This is one of the stories that's not easy to believe. More like bullshit rather than fact, but I assure you this is real. It was about 7 years ago in October, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, on the outskirts of Yakult at my house. It's about 9 p.m. No moon. Black as night can be. No rain. Clear skies. Stars everywhere. For a couple weeks, I've been dumping milk crates full of apples in my pasture to feed the deer. The distance is about 100 feet from the house to where the pile of apples were. Note, I don't shoot deer on my property. That isn't hunting. That's just shooting. Sometimes it's food getting. Anyway, I'm in the house when suddenly I hear the loudest wolf-like howling I've ever heard. I step out onto the porch and there is something just inside the timber howling. I had an 80-pound German Shepherd at that time, and this thing in the trees was much louder than my dog could ever be. At this time, my sister-in-law came downstairs and said, "Don't go out there." I told her, "I'm not going out there. I want to see what that is." Oh, sorry. I told her, "No, I'm going out there. I want to see what that is." My wife and sister-in-law were both born and raised in Alaska. They know what a wolf sounds like. And she says, "That's not a wolf and definitely not a dog." I agreed. So I grabbed a mag light, which isn't very bright compared to the gazillion candle power spotlight I have today. And, in the other hand, I had my 1911 Colt 45 ACP loaded with 240 grain Federal Hydra Shock hollow points. For your information, knowing what I know today, I would never shoot at a Sasquatch unless it was truly out to harm me, or worse. However, a dog man, shoot to kill. Back to the story. I walked about 50 feet to the pasture fence, and 30 feet from me were 4 black-tailed deer standing rigid in fear. I could have walked right up on them. They're at the apples, not eating, just terrified. Now, if I had my dog with me, she would have just run up to the fence and bark, bark, and bark. And the deer would run away and come back later. Now, this next part is hard to believe. And what I experienced next was not mind speak. It was more like translating. I heard a very loud howling, which I believe is louder than a wolf can make. It had a sad and frightened sound to it, like whatever was howling was scared. And yes, I said it sounded like it was scared. There have been times throughout my life when I would just know things, like when my cousin phoned early one morning and he told me his mother had passed away that night. I told him, "Yes, I know," as he's telling my wife that my aunt died during the night. Nobody told me, I just knew. Or the phone will ring and I will know who it is before getting to the phone. One time I told a friend how his dream ended without ever having heard him tell me about it before. He said, "How do you know this?" I told him the truth. I had the same dream over 20 years before. That's bizarre. When I heard that thing howling, what I interpreted when I heard that long, sad, lonely howl was, "I'm scared, I want to go home." That's an interesting note to take. It's comparable to hearing someone speak to you in a foreign language that you are fluent in. They speak to you in their language, and you unconsciously translate it to English. I hope that makes sense. What I believe I heard that night was the plea of an adolescent teenage Sasquatch on its first solo deer hunt, that it had been stationed where it could see the deer as an elder Sasquatch watched. Then here I came along and fouled up the whole thing. If that's truly what happened, I cannot find the words to express how apologetic I am to that family of forest people. I just didn't know. Steve, it wasn't until I found your videos and the knowledge I've been learning from the people that I now know what happened that night. I have a request that maybe someone in the audience can help me with. Sometime back, one of you from Carson, Washington shared your story. Then almost as an afterthought, you/he mentioned
you had talked to a friend of yours in Yacolt, Washington. Your friend told you that a 12-year-old daughter and little sister witnessed a dog-man type creature looking over their backyard fence at them. The next day, the mother and both girls saw it again. Because I live in Yacolt, this concerns me. Could someone please tell me what the title of that video is? I'd like to watch it again. And for your information, there was a video that was also shared some time back about a log truck driver whose truck was severely damaged by a Sasquatch in the Yacolt area. That truck company was 3 miles from my house. The driver came in that night, parked his truck, said nothing to anyone, and quit his job. That's Yacolt. End of story. Wow. P.S. To all you followers out there, my message to you is, don't cut your corner off. They will know what that means. Vaya con Dios. Vaya con Dios. Always buck. Steve, I'll leave this next part up to your discretion. However, I have no problem with you sharing this with the people. Okay, I'm sharing it. I don't know what you're going to say. At the time of this writing, January 25th, 2024, the tyrant in the White House and the great state of Texas are on the cusp of civil war. This is due primarily to his open border policy, the invasion of America. As of today, 25 Republican state governors, half of all governors in the U.S. stand with Texas, as do I. A line in the sand's been drawn. You cannot have an illegal president and a tyrannical government make rules and laws contrary to America's Constitution. We as the citizens of the United States are duty bound by our Constitution and our Second Amendment Bill of Rights, the right to own and bear arms. And we are charged to stand against all threats to America, both foreign and domestic. Hear, hear. And if necessary, remove by force any tyrannical government that has usurped power from the people and returned our country back to the republic it once was. I pray that peace and compromise will prevail, and that no shots are fired due to the illegal actions of a tyrannical government. And that Americans once again can come together and preserve the United States of America. May God have mercy on us all. There you go. Sir, I appreciate you sending in that email. Absolutely. I got no problems sharing the last part of that email at all. It's funny, there you go. On a side note, back, talking the topic at hand that dominates the channel. There is a logger, 70-year-old man, logger. And he didn't see one of these beings while he was logging. So I'm just saying, you have a lot of people that'll comment and say, I worked in the bush for 30 years. I never seen one. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just does not matter, does it? But a lot of people seem to think that's fuel to deny the truth, what's going on out there, just because their uncle's cousin's neighbor down the road worked in the forestry service for 45 years and didn't see shit. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Then getting back to the end of that email, you know what? It all does boil down to the choice we have, right? You got the choice to be honest in life, and you got the choice to be kind. There's a lot of people that have chosen to do the opposite. And that's all it is, a choice. If it was mandatory that every one of us remained absolutely honest, imagine what it would be like. Imagine what it would be like if every single human being was just honest. Wouldn't that be absolutely something else? Wow. But it's something. It's definitely something to think about. It's two of life's easiest lessons, right? It's real simple. But the outcome, if those lessons are learned and followed, the outcome would be indescribable. Be something else, right? If every human being was just honest. Should be honest and kind. Dishonesty, it dominates the people who have made it to the top of the heap. But that's another topic I'm going to talk about another day, because I really got a lot to say about that. But I've learned a lot. I've come to a lot of conclusions. And I've had a lot of our senior members of society have emailed me in over the handful of years, and I've remembered certain things I've said, and I haven't shared them here, but they stay in my mind, just so you know. The knowledge that I pick up from all of you along the ride stays in my mind, and I keep it there. And it's tough sometimes to try to put it all together and share verbally in front of a camera. When it comes to the light, the answers to us, and everything, it all boils down to kindness and honesty. And that's true. Sounds simple, but it's very true. And it seems to be a real tough thing for a lot of human beings to grasp today. It's shitty, right? Anyways, I'm babbling. I know I am. I'm exhausted. My internal clock's off. I gotta get my SIM card, put my SIM card back in my cell phone. Admittedly, I've been out of touch with basically everybody the whole time we were gone. And for anyone out there who I'm normally being in touch with, don't be insulted by that. Doesn't change anything about who I am or how I feel about you. We left for a month, and we left it all here. You know, I think too, one of my weaknesses is, I can't count how many fights I get invited to fight doing this. And I'm a sucker. I shouldn't say I'm a sucker, but I can be easily led into battle for good people. And it can consume a lot of my time and a lot of my life. And I have to try to slow down on that in a way, somewhat. But so I guess all I'm saying is, definitely needed that break, and the break has been taken, and now I'm back at it. And I'm going to come at a lot of things with a bit of a vengeance. But one thing I would like to close this on, though, for sure, is to encourage people to raise your children to be honest at all costs and kind. That would change the world. That is one thing that would change the world. You know, it's almost, if you could wrangle up all the people who are causing a lot of pain and suffering for human beings and put them in a room and said flat out, you know, obviously good people have to do bad things sometimes, right? It's when you give people the choice. Look, you can do it. You want to be honest and kind, or do you want to be the opposite? You're going to be a chance to turn it around and be honest and kind. And if they can't, all right. Well, I guess we just have to eliminate your ass then, right? Because all you are is a nasty-ass cancer that's going to eat away at the flesh of society, right? Anyway, babbling. Got to stop babbling. Sorry if this is a little all over the map, and I was too, and I'm obviously stubborn. I still forced myself to come and do it regardless. Maybe I shouldn't have today, but I did. And I'll share it. Anyway, I'm going to go. I got to get caught up. I couldn't do a live today. I'll do it in a handful of days. And I'll get a hold of everybody I need to get hold of soon. I just got to get some shit squared away first and get back into the groove, and especially get our clock meshed up with daylight times here. Daylight time. Share my story at howtohunt.com. Get it in. You got something that's going to help you or me or the people through me? Get it to me. Share my story at howtohunt.com.